My name is Emily Parker. I'm 31 years old, and until recently my life was a constant struggle of balancing rent, juggling 2 part-time jobs at a diner and a bookstore, and praying every month that my old car wouldn't break down before payday. Most nights I fell asleep exhausted, worried about how I would keep up with bills and still help my younger sister Chloe with her college fees. I never believed in luck, so when I bought a lottery ticket on a whim while picking up groceries, I laughed at myself for wasting those few dollars. The next morning, sitting at my tiny kitchen table with a cup of stale coffee, I checked the numbers just for fun, and the world seemed to tilt on its axis. Every digit matched. My hands shook violently, and I had to reread the results over and over before the reality sank in. I had just won millions. For a moment I couldn't breathe, staring at the crumpled ticket like it was a ticking time bomb. Relief and joy poured through me, but so did something else, fear. I thought about what would happen if my family knew. Would they still love me for who I am, or would they see me only as a bank account? My parents had always favored Chloe, and my brother Michael never missed a chance to remind me of my failures, so could I really trust them with a secret this big? That night, lying awake in the silence of my apartment, I made the boldest decision of my life. I wouldn't tell a soul. Not my parents, not Chloe, not Michael. I would keep my fortune hidden and watch how they treated me when they thought I was still the broke, struggling Emily they had always underestimated. I believed that family was supposed to support each other no matter what, but I was about to discover how wrong I was, and that money doesn't change people. It only shows their true faces. The memory of that night is still burned into my mind as if it happened yesterday. I had stopped at the corner gas station after my shift at the diner, bone-tired and smelling of fried food, just to grab milk and bread. At the counter, the bright display of lottery tickets caught my eye. I almost ignored it, but something about the way the clerk said, "Feeling lucky tonight," made me laugh and hand over a few crumpled bills. I shoved the ticket into my purse, fully expecting it to join the dozens of losing slips I'd bought in the past, and forgot about it. The next morning, sitting in my cramped kitchen, I unfolded it absent-mindedly while scrolling through the winning numbers on my phone. At first, I thought I was reading it wrong. My sleep-deprived brain had to be playing tricks. I checked once, twice, 10 times. Each time, my stomach dropped further, until I realized it was real. I had won. Tens of millions of dollars were suddenly mine. My first reaction was pure euphoria. I jumped up, knocking over my coffee, my heart hammering like it might explode. For a few precious minutes I let myself imagine everything I could finally do. Pay off debts, help Chloe through school, buy a home where I didn't hear my neighbors fighting through the thin walls. But just as quickly, a cold fear crept in. My mind replayed every conversation with my parents, who always criticized me for not being as responsible as Michael. I remembered how easily my family dismissed my struggles, how quick they were to judge me, but how often they turned a blind eye to Chloe's or Michael's mistakes. I thought of how Michael borrowed money constantly, never paying it back, and how my mother excused him every single time. If they knew I was suddenly wealthy, how long would it take before they bled me dry? Would they even ask, or would they simply expect it, like it was their right? My chest tightened at the thought. That was when the joy shifted into terror. What if I lost everyone I cared about because of this money? What if they stopped seeing me as Emily, their daughter and sister, and only saw dollar signs? The idea hollowed me out inside. After hours of pacing, crying, laughing, and pacing again, I made a decision. I would not tell anyone. Not my parents, not Chloe, not Michael, not even my best friend. The fortune would stay my secret, locked away in silence, until I could figure out what to do with it. If my family truly loved me, I wanted to see it without money clouding their judgment. My hands trembled as I hid the winning ticket in an envelope inside a box of old winter sweaters, almost afraid to touch it again, like it was too powerful to hold. That night, As I lay in the dark staring at the ceiling, the thought kept echoing in my head. I had everything I ever wanted, and yet I couldn't tell a soul. The strangest part about suddenly becoming a millionaire was how normal life looked on the outside. I still woke up at 6 a.m., still tied my apron at the diner, still counted my tips and crumpled bills at the end of each shift. My coworkers joked about how I never took a vacation, and my boss scolded me for being late when Chloe had a fever, but I smiled through it, knowing I could quit any second if I wanted to. My parents, of course, still looked at me with thinly veiled disappointment, reminding me at every family dinner how Michael had just gotten promoted again, how Chloe was so lucky to have an older brother as a role model, while I just sat there nodding, pretending the meatloaf was more interesting than their words. They never asked if I was happy, only if I was managing, and I let them believe I wasn't. I drove my old car that coughed smoke at every stoplight, wore the same faded jeans, clipped coupons at the grocery store. If anything, I leaned into the role of the struggling daughter, because keeping up the act was safer than the alternative. But sometimes the charade nearly broke me. Like the night Chloe begged to join her school's art club, and I told her we couldn't afford the supplies, even though I had more than enough sitting in my bank account. Her little face fell, and my heart cracked in half, but I forced myself to stay in character. Or the time my cousin's wedding turned into another lecture, my mother whispering, "If only you had chosen a better career, maybe you'd have something to show for yourself." I laughed it off, but later in the bathroom, I stared at my reflection and thought, if only you knew. The truth weighed heavy, pressing against me like a secret that wanted to burst free, but I kept swallowing it down, convincing myself that this experiment mattered. I wanted to see who really loved me when I had nothing. I wanted to see if my family would ever choose me for me, not for what I could give them. Yet every judgmental comment, every dismissive look, every comparison to Michael made the silence harder to hold. And still I smiled, tucked my lottery ticket deeper into its hiding spot, and told myself, not yet. Not until I know for sure. That I waited until the month rent was due before I made my move, because I wanted the test to be real, not a staged hint or a gentle request, but a moment where my family would have to choose whether to help me when I had nothing to offer. I called my mother that Friday afternoon and spoke with as much strain as I could muster, my voice small and tired. "Mom, I'm behind on rent. The landlord's being strict this month. Can you help me with $500 until next payday?" There was a long pause on the other end, and then her voice, careful and flat, said, "Emily, you know we're managing things here too. We can't just be handing out money every time." I tried to keep my tone steady, to let the disappointment come across without sounding accusing. "It's not a lot," I said. "I can pay you back next month." She sighed, the way she always had when I asked for anything, like my requests were burdensome and predictable. "We're saving for Chloe's tuition, Em. You'll understand someday." That answer stung because I knew the tuition money existed. My mother never stopped talking about it, but she framed it as an immovable priority and offered nothing but sympathy. I thanked her and hung up, chest tight but determined. If family was family, I thought, they'd help. Next I texted my brother Michael, who usually had an opinion on everything I did wrong. His reply was immediate and cold. "Again? You're always behind. Why can't you manage? Maybe stop buying coffee every day." There was a cruelty in the bluntness. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't ask what happened. He lectured me like I'd made a recurring nuisance of myself. The cousins who'd always smiled at Samantha's antics were no better. When I told one of them I needed help covering a utility bill, the message I got back was a short laughing emoji and, "Girl, you're hopeless. Fix your budget." It felt like invisible knives being turned in my ribs. I swallowed the rising burn of humiliation and decided to go to my Aunt Margaret, a woman who had occasionally offered a kind word at holidays, hoping she might show a sliver of decency. I knocked on her door, rehearsed my lines, and explained my situation. She nodded with a sympathetic look, but then added, almost as an afterthought, "You know, sometimes people make choices that lead to this. Maybe think about how you're spending." Her pity came with a lecture. The house of cards I'd built in my head, of unconditional love and immediate help, crumbled piece by piece. The day I walked into the church basement where my cousin's fundraiser was being organized and asked, in front of half the family, if anyone could help with a small emergency expense, was the day the pretense finished collapsing. Samantha, who'd always worn concern like an accessory, walked by with a group and, seeing me, stopped with an exaggerated look of shock that instantly dissolved into a practiced smile. "Oh, Em," she said loud enough for several relatives to hear. "Always dramatic. Can't you manage your life better?" She laughed, the sound bright and sharp, and a few people snickered, as if my request were a punchline in her personal show. I felt my face flush, hot and ashamed. Worse still was when someone, Uncle Frank, called out, "Is this another one of Emily's stories? She's always saving face." The room bristled with an uneasy chorus of agreement that felt like being pelted with small, precise stones. It wasn't just that they refused to help, it was that they mocked me for needing it, like need was a character flaw. I remember standing there, voice small, trying to explain that I genuinely needed a hand this month, and watching the sympathetic glances go elsewhere, heard someone whisper, "Some people just never learn." Then came the worst moment. Michael walked up, face set, and said, "You've always been irresponsible. We can't keep bailing you out. Why should we reward bad choices?" He didn't ask what this was for. He didn't offer a loan or advice, only an accusation that wrapped itself like a noose around everything I'd done to keep my life afloat. I walked out of that fundraiser feeling the world tilt, reality splintering into pieces where the people I'd loved most revealed their true priorities. That night, alone in my tiny kitchen, I realized the experiment had done more than confirm worst fears. It had stripped away the illusion I had been clinging to. My millions, the safety I'd imagined, meant nothing if the people who were supposed to be my family saw me as a burden. I'd begged and been ridiculed, asked and been scolded, reached out and been shut down. The cold clarity settled on me like frost. Money might solve some problems, but it would not buy me the genuine devotion I'd hoped for. If my family reacted to my plea by policing my worth instead of protecting my need, then their love had always been conditional, not something I could rely on when it counted. In that hollow moment I made a promise to myself. Whatever I did next, it would not be so I could keep being used and then laughed at. The test had revealed the truth, and now I had to decide how to respond to it, that I couldn't hold back anymore. After days of swallowing their cruelty, their smirks, and their lectures, the anger finally broke through me like a flood. I stood up in the middle of my parents' living room, the same room where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays for years, and my voice came out shaking but loud. "Do you all even hear yourselves?" I snapped, staring at each of them. My mother who wouldn't lend me $500, my brother who mocked me in front of others, Samantha who laughed at my struggles like it was entertainment. You talk about family, about loyalty, about being there for each other, but the second I asked for help, just once, you turned me into a joke. They blinked, surprised that I was speaking with such fire, but no one apologized. Instead, Michael scoffed, leaning back in his chair like he was bored. "You've always been dramatic, Emily. You can't expect people to throw money at you whenever you're irresponsible. That's not how the world works." My chest tightened, fury mixing with the deep ache of betrayal. "Irresponsible?" I fired back. "Who paid your rent in college when you were too busy partying to keep a job? Who sold her car, So Mom could afford her surgery 5 years ago. Who took care of your kids, Samantha, when you wanted to focus on your career? I've been the one giving, always giving, and the one time I asked for help, all I got was insults and laughter. My mother shifted uncomfortably, her eyes flickering to the floor. For a brief moment I thought guilt might reach her, but then she sighed and said, "Emily, don't drag up the past. Family does things without keeping score." That line hit me like a slap. I almost laughed at the hypocrisy. Without keeping score. You all kept score the second you labeled me the irresponsible one, the burden. You keep score every time you compare me to other cousins, every time you remind me of my mistakes. But when it's my sacrifices, suddenly it doesn't count. Samantha rolled her eyes, clearly annoyed the spotlight wasn't on her anymore. "Oh, please, Em. Don't act like you're some kind of saint. You helped when you could, sure, but nobody owes you just because you made choices back then." Her words dripped with disdain, and I saw the greed hidden beneath her casual tone. Because as much as they dismissed me, I knew if they even suspected I had money, their tune would change in a heartbeat. That thought lodged itself deep inside me. They didn't care about me, they cared about what I had or didn't have to give them. I stared at them all, heart pounding, anger burning through every nerve. Do you even realize how cruel you sound? You talk about loyalty, about blood being thicker than water, but all you've shown me is that my worth to you depends on whether I can be useful. You wouldn't help me when I needed it, but if I won the lottery tomorrow, I know you'd all be lined up at my door. For a moment, the room fell silent. The truth I'd thrown out hung heavy in the air, and I could see the flicker in their eyes, the tiny crack where their greed showed through. They didn't argue that point. They didn't deny it. They just stayed quiet, and that silence said more than words ever could. My father finally cleared his throat and muttered, "Emily, don't exaggerate. We love you, of course we do. But you can't expect people to give and give. Everyone has their own problems." It was such a hollow, rehearsed excuse that I almost laughed. Love wasn't what I had felt in their reactions. Love doesn't mock. Love doesn't refuse compassion. Love doesn't watch someone cry and call it a joke. My hands shook as I held their gaze. I wanted to scream the truth then and there, that I had millions sitting in a bank account, that their little struggling Emily could buy and sell their pity 10 times over. The words sat on the tip of my tongue, sharp and ready, but I swallowed them back, letting the tension throb in the silence. Instead, I said, slowly and deliberately, "One day you're all going to see exactly who I am and what I'm worth. And when that day comes, don't expect me to forget how you treated me when you thought I had nothing." Their eyes followed me as I grabbed my coat and headed for the door. Some looked confused, some guilty, but most looked uneasy, like they sensed something they couldn't quite name. That was fine. I wanted them to feel that unease, because the truth was simmering under the surface, waiting for the right moment to explode. And when it did, there would be no taking it back. The breaking point came faster than I expected. Days of holding the secret inside had worn me down, and the weight of their mockery crushed the last of my patience. We were sitting around the dinner table, Samantha smirking across from me, while Michael whispered something that made him snicker. My mother sighed in that tired, judgmental way she always did, as if my existence alone was a disappointment. And then Samantha leaned forward with her fake sweet smile and said, "Honestly, Emily, maybe if you stopped wasting money on nonsense, you wouldn't be begging us for help. Some people just aren't meant to succeed, you know." Something inside me snapped. My hands trembled, my chest felt like fire, and before I could stop myself, the words exploded out of me. "You think I'm begging because I'm broke? You think I'm some pathetic failure?" I slammed my hands on the table, every eye snapping toward me. "I've kept this to myself for months, but you want the truth? Fine. I'm a millionaire. I won the lottery. Millions. More money than you'll ever see in your lives." The room froze. Forks clattered onto plates. For a moment, all I heard was the ringing in my ears and my own ragged breathing. My father blinked rapidly, shaking his head like he misheard. Emily, don't joke like that. But my voice cut sharp and certain. It's not a joke. I won. Months ago. I didn't tell any of you because I wanted to see if you cared about me or just what I could give you. And now I have my answer. Shock rippled through the room, but it didn't take long for disbelief to turn into something uglier. Samantha's jaw dropped, her eyes narrowing. You're lying. If you had millions, why would you come to us asking for help? Her laugh was bitter, mocking, but there was fear in her eyes, too. I looked her dead in the face. Because I wanted to test you. I wanted to see if family meant anything beyond money. But when I asked, all you gave me was cruelty. Michael leaned forward, suddenly all interest. Wait, so you really have money? Like, how much are we talking? Millions, really? My skin crawled at the sudden shift in his tone, from cold mockery to greedy curiosity. My mother gasped, clutching her chest. Emily, sweetheart, why didn't you tell us sooner? We could have helped guide you, protected you, made sure no one took advantage. Her words were drenched in false concern, but I could see the calculation in her eyes. They weren't imagining my happiness. They were imagining what they could get from me. It was like a mask had been ripped away. The same people who sneered at me hours ago now leaned toward me like vultures circling prey. Samantha's face twisted with fury. So you let me think you were broke while sitting on millions? That's sick. Do you know how much I could have used that money? Do you know the stress I've been under? Her voice rose, dripping with entitlement, as if my win belonged to her. I felt cold inside. Their shock had melted into greed so quickly it made my stomach turn. Not one person said, I'm proud of you, or I'm happy for you. Not one asked how I felt, how I was handling it, how my life had changed. No, every word was about them, about what they thought I owed, about how my secret was unfair to them. I leaned back, staring at each of them with new eyes. This is exactly why I didn't tell you, I said quietly. Because I knew the moment you found out, I'd stop being your daughter, your sister, your family. I'd just be a bank account. And now here you are, proving me right. Silence hung heavy, broken only by Samantha's scoff. Don't act like you're better than us. If you really had money, you'd share. That's what family does. Her words dripped with venom, but all I heard was desperation. My father tried to smooth things over, reaching across the table with a shaky smile. Come on now, Em. We're just surprised. We're happy for you, of course we are. But you can't expect us not to feel hurt you kept it secret. Let's talk about this reasonably. We can plan things together, maybe invest. And that was it. The final proof. They didn't love me. They loved the money. The realization hit me like ice water. These weren't the faces of family anymore. They were masks of greed, of betrayal, of hunger. I stood, pushing back my chair, my voice steady now. You've made it perfectly clear what I mean to you. And it's not love. It's not loyalty. It's not family. It's money. But let me make something clear in return. You'll never see a cent of it. Not now. Not ever. Their protests rose up in a storm behind me. Denials, pleas, anger. But I walked out with my head high, heartbreaking but lighter than it had been in months. The truth was out, and their true selves had followed. I didn't need their approval anymore. I had seen what they valued, and it wasn't me. It never was. Walking out of that house felt like shedding years of weight I didn't even realize I had been carrying. For so long, I had convinced myself that keeping ties with my family, no matter how cruel, dismissive, or manipulative they were, was my duty. That blood meant loyalty. That maybe, if I just tried harder, loved more, gave more, one day they would see me as worthy. But the night I revealed my secret, I finally understood the truth. Family isn't defined by blood, it's defined by love. And the people sitting at that table had proven they didn't have any for me. In the weeks that followed, I made the hardest choice of my life. I cut ties with them completely. No calls, no texts, no second chances. At first, the silence was suffocating. I half expected apologies, half dreaded more manipulation. But what came instead were demands disguised as pleas, messages about how unfair I was being, about how I was punishing them, about how family is supposed to share. Not one message asked how I was doing. Not one message said, "I love you." That told me everything I needed to know. Instead of drowning in their noise, I turned my focus toward something better, toward myself, and toward a life I had only dared to imagine. The money, once a secret I held in fear, became a tool for freedom. I found a therapist and began working through years of scars left by their neglect and cruelty. I booked a trip to places I had only seen on postcards, standing in front of oceans and mountains that made me realize how small my pain really was in the grand scheme of things. I even set up a scholarship fund at the local community center for kids who, like me, had been told they weren't enough. Because if my wealth could save even one person from feeling the way my family had made me feel, then maybe it was worth winning after all. Most importantly, I redefined what family meant. My best friend Claire, who had stood by me when I had nothing, became more of a sister than Samantha ever was. The elderly neighbor who always checked in on me got her leaky roof fixed and groceries delivered weekly. These were people who had shown me care without expecting a single thing in return. And I realized that is true wealth, not the millions in my bank account, not the luxury of never worrying about bills again, but the peace of surrounding myself with people who loved me for who I was, not for what I had. There were still moments of grief, of course. Sometimes, late at night, I would think of the family dinners we never had, the hugs I never got, the words of encouragement I never heard. I mourned the idea of the family I wished I had, the one I kept hoping existed behind all the cruelty. But slowly, through therapy and the warmth of chosen family, I accepted something vital. You can't force people to love you. And you don't have to keep bleeding yourself dry to earn their affection. For the first time in my life, I wasn't defined by their judgment. I wasn't the failure or the burden. I was free to build a life that wasn't about proving myself to people who would never care, but about nurturing the ones who did. And as I looked at the life I was creating, one filled with peace, kindness, and authenticity, I realized that winning the lottery hadn't truly changed me. What changed me was losing my family. And strangely enough, that loss was the greatest gift of all. Because real wealth isn't measured in millions. It's measured in peace, in healing, and in love, the kind you choose, and the kind that chooses you back. When I look back now, I realize the money itself was never the problem, it was the people around me. Winning the lottery didn't magically turn my family greedy or cruel. It simply stripped away the masks they've been wearing all along. Money doesn't change people. It reveals who they really are. The truth is, my family had always been dismissive, selfish, and entitled. The millions just gave them the excuse to show it more openly. And while that revelation hurt, it also freed me. Because once you see someone's true face, you can't unsee it. You can only decide what you're going to do about it. For me, the decision was painful but necessary. I chose peace over pretense, healing over obligation, and love over loyalty to people who never valued me. And if there's one lesson I've taken from this journey, it's that no amount of money can buy genuine care or respect. Real wealth isn't in the numbers on a bank screen. It's in the safety of knowing who you can trust when you have nothing to give. So I want to ask you, what would you do? If tomorrow you woke up and discovered you'd won millions, would you run to your family with the news? Or would you hesitate, wondering if they loved you or for what you could provide? Would you risk seeing their true colors, or would you keep the secret close, protecting your heart? I know what I chose, and I don't regret it. But now I'm curious, how about you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever seen money, or even the lack of it, reveal someone's true character? I'd love to hear your stories. And if my journey resonated with you, if it made you reflect on your own relationships, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to protect your peace, even from family. Because at the end of the day, the truest kind of wealth isn't something you can deposit in a bank. It's the kind you build in your heart.